Turkish coffee has a reputation for being gritty, burnt, and so bitter that you can't enjoy it without sugar. And all too often, that's the case. Throughout the Mediterranean and the Middle East, street vendors will bury their pots in hot sand and boil the coffee to impress the tourists. It catches the eye and ruins the brew. But it need not be so. This might be the oldest, simplest, and cheapest method of brewing, but it absolutely can be worthy of fine specialty coffee. It can produce a cup that even the fussiest of coffee sophisticates will enjoy. You just have to get the grind and roast level right and avoid overheating and over-extraction, all of which you can learn. Forget what you've been told. When it comes to Turkish coffee, the less authentic, the better. Let me show you the way. Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
This is very on brand for the Wired Gourmet. I'm going to demonstrate the least expensive, least fussy way of making delicious coffee, and I'm going to triumph with some technical insight and a few skills that anyone can master. First, we need to avoid the most common flaw, over-extraction. The factors that you can adjust to prevent it are the density of the beans, the roast level, slurry agitation, and the length of brewing time. Let's start with bean density. Dense coffee resists brewing. Soluble solids dissolve less readily, so it can tolerate higher slurry temperatures without tasting burnt. As a general rule, beans grown at high altitudes are denser than ones grown at low altitudes. Light roasting is another way to produce a denser bean. The cellulose matrix degrades as the beans darken, which promotes extraction, or in this case, over-extraction. Turkish coffee slurry will reach 93 to 95 degrees Celsius at its peak, and that is high. So I recommend using light to medium roasted beans grown at altitudes of 1500 meters or higher. Today I'm using a Typica from Uganda grown at around 1600 meters that I roasted about 2 weeks before making this video. As you can see, they're pretty light. I prefer a ratio of 1:8. 1 gram of coffee for each 8 milliliters of water. So in this case, 30 grams and 240 milliliters. Always use a pot suited to the amount of coffee that you want to brew, and always fill it to just below the neck. They look like this for a reason. The shape emphasizes the expanding foam that will signal the end of the brew. Avoid slurry agitation except for an initial blending at a low temperature. Once the slurry gets hot, say over 70 degrees Celsius, you're only going to cause over-extractions, so leave the coffee alone. Finally, there's the brew time. You should regulate the heat so that your brew takes a total of 2 to 2.5 minutes. I start with water at 60 degrees Celsius. This gives me a head start and makes blending easy. Now, I'm doing this on my bench using an alcohol lamp. Normally, I do it on my stove, where I can easily nail the timing, but for reasons that would be of no interest to you, I prefer to demonstrate here at my bench. So do as I say, not as I do. This lamp does not produce enough heat to finish the brew on deadline, so this will not be a real-time demo. There are a couple of factors that we're stuck with. The grind has got to be extremely fine, like powder. This is an example of what we're looking for. Low-altitude beans roasted dark will guarantee over-extraction when pulverized this much, so again, avoid that type of coffee. I hate to say this, but if you haven't got a burr grinder, you'll need to use pre-ground coffee. Of course, that doesn't have to be bad. If you know a shop with good beans that will grind to order, you can buy small amounts that should remain tolerably fresh for a few days, up to perhaps a week. One alternative would be to get a quality hand grinder, which will be quiet, small, basic, and totally Wired Gourmet. A serviceable one can be had for around $200. It will come in handy for other brewing methods where you simply can't get away with using a blade grinder, most notably espresso. Your slurry temperature is fixed. You'll reach the peak of around 93 to 95 degrees Celsius just as the foam expands. That expansion is your signal to pour, so you won't need a thermometer. Pouring promptly will cool the coffee, limiting the time it spends in the overheated range to a few seconds. It will bring it under 90 degrees Celsius immediately. You'll see some experts taking the pot away from the heat, pouring a bit of coffee, then reheating to create more foam. This is a pointless exercise. It's just for show. Reheating increases the froth, all right, but it delays cooling, so don't do it. Just accept the amount of foam you get from the first expansion. Most of it will be gone by the time the coffee is settled and cooled enough for you to enjoy, so it's not worth the harm. The coffee should rest for 2 to 3 minutes before you drink it. If you grind fine enough, all of the coffee particles will become waterlogged and sink. As you can see, this coffee is very clear. The flavors and aromas of fine coffee are all there. Turkish is as good as any other method, or at least it can be. It's different, of course. It has a stronger flavor than French press, but with the same rich texture. This is far less concentrated than espresso, or even mocha pot coffee for those who know my voodoo method. This is not a substitute for espresso. It's a completely different drink with a unique character. It absolutely is worthy of fine specialty beans. If you use the right type of coffee and the right roast level, avoid agitation, get the brew done in under 3 minutes, and pour promptly, your Turkish coffee will be a delight. Well, that's all for today. In my next video, I'll show you how to align the burrs on any Eureka Mignon series grinder. I have reason to believe that I'm on Santa's nice list this year, so I'll probably have something special to share with you after Christmas, perhaps mid-January. Following that, I'll be demonstrating several advanced tricks and techniques for the mocha pot, so keep in touch. Cheers!